All right, welcome back to part two of the Pro Football Doc podcast. It was great to have Nick on. Look, he was pretty honest, right? He was pretty honest about what was happening there with the owners versus players, etc. But here we go. Let's talk about the schedule as we teased and promised, the schedule release, and that happened this last week. They open up, interestingly enough, with 9 games at the 1 p.m. Eastern time slot. People who have followed have known I've been saying that for a long time. If you're going to have 9 games, you need a 9 box. All there is on DirecTV is an 8 box. We've got a solution for that at Pro Football Doc, but that's a whole nother story. But just to answer that, Ross Tucker helped me out here, and he knew why, but he, at least for me, asked, the boss, Michael North, who helps set the schedules. And he said, basically, the early set of games are regional in interest, and they want people to come back together in the second set of games, the 4 p.m. Eastern time slot. So they set that 4:30 game with more national interest. That's good, but I still think, 9 games at 1 p.m. Eastern and 4 games at 4 p.m. Eastern doesn't make sense, because what brings us back together is really the Sunday night football game. That's the national interest game bringing us back together. And maybe when we used to not have Sunday night football, that would be a different story. So I still lobby for an even split, 6-5, 5-5, something makes our life easier, more, and there's enough good football to watch. So what you don't want is one, quote, target game nationally that's a blowout, and the other 2 games aren't that exciting when you only have sometimes 3 games. But let's go through a little bit of what we were talking about with Nick in terms of when the schedule is released, what people look at, right? They look at different things. One thing that always happens is the travel distance disadvantage and how far you travel and this, that, the other. Look, we know the California teams always have to travel further. Usually it's the Seattle Seahawks that travel the furthest, but San Francisco or the LA teams are the ones that travel the furthest, because if you just look at even in the division, let's say for the AFC West, AFC West, you have the Chargers, the Raiders in Las Vegas, then the Denver Broncos and the Chiefs. Well, there's more mileage between the Chargers and the Chiefs than all the teams in the AFC North combined, right? They're all right there between the Ravens and the Steelers and the Bengals and the Browns, all in the Northeast. And so there's always going to be a disadvantage, and you know what division you're playing, et cetera. So the travel isn't so much. But here's what I always found. Nick gave an interesting thing. Players, in my experience, the first thing they looked at was the bye. And then maybe the big game and the TV games. Nick had an interesting perspective, right? He was looking at who's the beast nose tackle that he's got to go up against and which weeks are those. And he looks at it a little bit like a player or like a coach does. Coaches look at the big divisional games, because what everyone says is you got to win your division. That's how you make the playoffs, winning your division. So the division games are, I think, in general, what coaches look at first before overall scheduling. Doctors, let me tell you what I looked at. I looked at midweek games, whether it was the Thursday game or 3-day travel games, because I had my own practice Monday through Friday. So a Monday night game upsets that. A East Coast Sunday game upsets that, because we would leave by noon on Friday. So I would immediately go through and, okay, what are the dates that I have to block out of my schedule from surgeries or clinics? Friday leaving early, or that Thursday night game, Monday game, especially if it's travel for a Monday or Thursday game. That's what I looked at. So everyone looks at their own things. And the wives, girlfriends, they would always look at the holidays. Are they around? Are they playing the Thanksgiving game? What's happening at Christmas? different birthdays for family members. That's what they would look at. What do they have to reschedule in terms of what's going on? But the schedule release is always an interesting thing. Now, it used to be, there's all this excitement about the schedule release, but you all know that all the teams are already determined. All the opponents are already determined. It's just the order and the date that they're played that is determined on schedule release. It used to be 2 games formed strength of schedule when it was 16 games, right? You played each team in your division twice, so that's 6 games. 3 teams, other teams in your division, that's 6. You would play everyone in the AFC division on a rotating basis, so that's 4 more games. And then you'd play everyone in an NFC division on a rotating basis. That's another 4 games. That gives you 14. And then 2 strength of schedule games. If you finish 3rd in the AFC West, you would play the 3rd place AFC North team or the 3rd place AFC South team in the divisions that you weren't matched up. So really only 2 strength of schedule games that change year to year. Now with 17 games, it's 3 strength of schedule games on a rotating basis, an NFC division, either 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th place team. Very symmetrical right now, which is what makes expansion a little bit hard right now to get to different numbers because everything is so symmetrical. Sorry guys, I'm trying to get some. So one thing the NFL didn't think about is that, and Pro Football Talk points it out here, having buys stretch into week 14 with 17 weeks could have quite an influence on fantasy football playoffs. The fantasy football playoffs still start week 14. When you're drafting, you better look at that week 14 to make sure that you have enough bodies to get through that playoff game. Look, everyone looks at buys for fantasy. I was lucky enough to play in the Scott Fish Bowl this last year. Hopefully I get the invite again, Scott, if you're watching. Was lucky enough to do fairly well, but definitely looking at buys is important. But when I drafted last year, I knew I had an inordinate amount of Kansas City Chiefs, and I forget the week. Obviously Patrick Mahomes and did me very, very well as as some of the other Chiefs players. But I knew that Mahomes' stack with his number 1 wide receiver was going to cost me when they had a bye, and it did. We actually had a lot of other players on a bye, but that's just 1 regular season loss. When that happens to you in week 14, that would be huge. So that's something to keep an eye on, etc. All right, let's move on to our rundown here. And with our rundown of players, Caleb Farley, dying to get back on the football field, rehabbing my butt off. He's the player with 2 spine surgeries, including one recently. Look, the Titans know what they're doing. They know he's injured right now. They took a bargain player, a guy that would have been a top 10 pick, and picked him in later part of the 1st round. They did it with Jeffrey Simmons coming off an ACL tear, and it's worked out for him. So the worry for Caleb Farley, I don't think is not going to be this season. The worry is beyond the rookie contract, how long he lasts. And, not a surprise there that he wasn't ready to really go yet. And let's go continue through our rundown here. Next up, Tom Brady expected to begin throwing this next week. He admitted to having a significant knee surgery. We still don't know what it was. It's not a ligament reconstruction, but it may indeed have been a microfracture surgery, hopefully a small area. Given that he's a pocket guy, yes, he runs quarterback sneaks, but he's not mobile. I don't think this is going to affect him that much. But he admitted to having a pretty serious knee injury and a long recovery after his surgery, but I don't think it's going to affect him too much. Dak Prescott in the news again. Last week we talked about him when Dak said he could play in a game today. And I said, well, he might be able to play, but nowhere near 100%. And Mike McCarthy now says he hopes or expects him to be cleared in time for training camp. And that's a reasonable expectation and timeline. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Dak Prescott is not 100% today, but he's scheduled to get there, hopefully by the start of training camp. And certainly by the time the season is here, he's not going to miss any time with the Cowboys there. Julian Edelman admitted to a PCL tear and bone on bone in an interview with Pat McAfee. And that's what prolonged his absence last year and quite honestly ended his career. And he's bone on bone. He's not going to sign with Tampa. It just is what it is as we move forward here. In terms of Julian Edelman, great career. Whether he's a Hall of Famer or not, that's not my decision. I think he's a great player, but I think his New England legacy is set. He will forever be loved in New England, and that is good on him, that he will forever be loved in New England. Drug testing, different sport. Something came up here. The Kentucky Derby winner tested positive, and Medina Spirit obviously lost in the Preakness, but really, a groom taking cough medicine peed on the hay, and Medina Spirit stall, and then Medina Spirit ate it and now tested positive for dexamethasone. A couple of things with that. I'm not a horse racing expert, but I don't think dexamethasone is, whether it helps the horse or not, it's not really in cough syrup, over-the-counter cough syrup. The other thing is, I don't know, does a horse eat hay that's been peed on? I mean, and finally, the barns that I've been in, and I haven't been a lot, but I've been lucky enough to have gone to the Derby and even checked out the stables. The hay is hanging, right? It's not thrown loosely on the ground. It's fed to the horse hanging. That's ergonomically better and easier for the horse. So I don't know how that hay got peed on in any case, but I just thought that was an interesting excuse. To me, it's a worse excuse than Brian Cushing's overtraining syndrome caused a positive test from a few years ago. But anyways, let's move on here. We're going to cover some other sports here and then do our video like we usually do here. Ronald Acuna with a ankle injury. Here's the video, but of his ankle injury. He doesn't jam it on the base. It's the right ankle that goes against the base. And the next step after is where he jams his ankle. More of a contusion bone bruise. That's why he's going to miss a short period of time. He's missed a few days, but should not be serious, which is good. I think they show the replay here again in 1 second. I hope they do. I thought they did. Maybe it was a different angle. But you'll see here, the right foot hits the bag, and then it's the first step after that he starts to limp on that. From that. All right. And then let's go to some of our what happened here video, show you two videos, two collision videos. And first one, some expected good news from this scary collision between Jose Abreu and Hunter Dozier. In real time, we wrote at Outkick that they both will be okay in the big picture. So here's the collision. Inadvertent.
Watch out. What the heck? You didn't see that coming. Neither saw the other. Ronald made the catch, but
and
was
here's another angle of it here. Let's get to this one. Tough collision. They both left the first end of the doubleheader. And believe it or not, Abreu wanted to try and play the second part of the doubleheader. He's back after his collision. Hunter Dozier is still out. Dozier had a quad contusion, neck discomfort, and on the concussion list. Abreu, in the meantime, a laceration and facial contusion, laceration, bruised left knee, but he's returned back to normal. So that was good results from a football type collision injury. And let's end here on another football type collision injury. Almost painful to see. It hurts me to see this. Before I even show you this video, it's recently we talked about on the Mother's Day podcast with my wife whether I'd let my 8-year-old son play football or not. I don't have to worry about that right now. He's doing well in baseball. He made an all-star team that I'm going to help coach, and we're thrilled for him. I'm not sure he will like the contact of football. He's played some flag football now, but I think football is a good sport, and I think football is the one team sport where everyone makes the team. I mean, track and field, track and cross country, everyone makes a team, but it's not the same feeling. Every other sport now, you have to be year-round travel ball just to make, et cetera. And so there's an upside to football, but this does kind of bother me a little bit, this collision that happens among these little kids here. So avert your eyes. But
Run. You're good. Get
one more time here.
You're good. Get
Look, I don't know. I just don't love that for a lot of reasons. Number one, don't lower your head ever at any level. Number two, these are little kids. You want them to enjoy the sport. Is the one that got trucked not going to ever play again? And I don't know who, what the real story was behind it and who was commenting. But I mean, I don't know. That's not exactly a big hit reaction. It should be, is the kid okay? Oh no, right? I mean, never lower your head. Don't use the helmet as a weapon. Let's make football a safe sport there. I hope the kid's okay. I have no idea who the kid is, kind of thing. And look, I mean, it's possible that the kid that knocked him on the back could get injured too, by lowering his head with a neck injury or something. Let's keep the game safe and clean. And there's no reason to need to have that. And let's this way we can maybe all enjoy football a little bit. And look, I'm not against tackle football at younger ages, but not when you're doing that. I mean, look, we talked earlier at the podcast, my son's a second grader and he's playing up in a league with third and fourth graders. I think for flag football, it is what it is kind of thing. But if it were competitive tackle football, there's no way. You got to have the same size guys, same development guys on the field if you're going to try and play it. Otherwise, in medicine, we say first do no harm. So sorry for the editorial, but not loving that video and felt like I had to highlight that some. Anyways, thanks again to Nick Hardwick, and use that free code again. We'll repeat it for you on the screen here to join his Lose Like a Lineman program. And heck, maybe I should sign up now post-COVID, et cetera, even though I wasn't a lineman. Anyways, thanks for watching and listening. Pro Football Doc Podcast. Thank you for the 5-star reviews, and we'll see you again next week.